No objection.
Okay, so those are both granted. You may proceed when you're ready, Ms. Naroda.
On June 7, 2025, the message was clear. Not today, Will. Not today. Today, Will. You will not get away. And he didn't. On June 7th of 2025, shortly before 8 p.m., they kidnapped Will. Then they killed him. Who are they? The defendant, Avion Gaines, acting in complicity with his brother, Aviante, his cousin, Xavier, his aunt, Lakeisha, and his friend, Solomon. The evidence will show they utilized 3 different vehicles. The defendant drove his black Nissan Altima. His brother Aviante drove his white Chrysler 300, where Solomon was a passenger. And his aunt's maroon vehicle cross was operated by both his aunt Lakeisha and cousin Xavier at different points in time, as the evidence will show. Together, ladies and gentlemen, they completed a strategic block-in of Will Sheffey in his car, a Hyundai Genesis. The block-in, where was it? In the middle of Painesville City at Rockwood and North State. And together, they allowed for 1 shot, 1 bullet to the head to end the life of 20-year-old William James Sheffey, Jr. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the evidence won't stop there in terms of the defendant's conduct. It will further demonstrate that they were not to be stopped. They didn't care what or who was in their way. They were going to get Will. It didn't matter who was in their wake. It didn't matter about Brent Adams and Jeffrey Lee, the front seat and back seat passenger in Will Sheffey's vehicle. It didn't matter about 2 individuals, Juan Padilla Reynoso and Alejandro Gonzalez Ramirez, who were just going about their life, sitting at the traffic light across the intersection on North State and Erie at 8 p.m. on June 7th, 2025. Now, you will not only hear about the events of June 7th, 2025, ladies and gentlemen, that led to Will's murder, but you will see it. The state's evidence consists of a variety of witnesses and camera footage from several sources, including a camera located at the North State and Erie Street intersection. And the evidence will demonstrate, while he may not have pulled the trigger, he forced the defendant into the victim into the line of fire. He forced Will Sheffey into the line of fire. You will see how he maneuvered his Altima, and the evidence will demonstrate while the defendant blocks Will in with his Nissan, he provides a gun to his cousin Xavier Jackson. And you'll see how he accomplishes that. A hand signal from Zai. You will see the handoff of the gun by Avion. Forcing Will onto North State, headed straight into Aviante's line of sight. Straight at Aviante's white Chrysler, which was pulled into Will's path of travel. Straight into the path of his bullet. Ladies and gentlemen, you will learn what happens after Will is shot. Both Jeff and Brent return fire. Jeff from inside the car and Brent from outside. You will learn the defendant's response. You will learn those the defendant was complicit with continued to fire at them. As I said, ladies and gentlemen, they were not to be stopped. They didn't care that that gunfire went across the intersection and injured Juan and Alejandro. They didn't care that it shot up Tiny Town Daycare. They didn't care that this was happening with a street festival down the road. The evidence will also explain to you what happens at the time that, to explain to you, sorry. What happens after Jeff and Brent return fire? A couple of things. First, Brent and Jeff leave the area of the car, and you will learn what they do. The defendant and his family also. You learn what they do, who they communicate with, what happens to anything they had with them. And you will learn what the police first encounter when they get to the scene. William James Sheffey Jr., deceased in the driver's seat. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before you receive that evidence, you will have the opportunity via a jury view to see the area that made up the crime scene on June 7th and the surrounding areas. It will involve two routes, two paths of travel to the intersection in the area of Rockwood, North State, and North State in the area. One path of travel of Will Sheffey and one of the defendant. You will see a number of things that you will hear about during the presentation of the evidence. The location of the camera that captures the defendant's conduct. The location of the residence of various people that you will hear about in the north end of town. And when you receive that evidence, what you're going to learn is that on June 7th, the defendant was focused on Will. And as a result, as the day unfolded, so did the defendant's family become so focused. The evidence will chronicle a large portion of the last day of Will's life. And as a result of that focus, the defendant and his family inserted themselves in his. You will learn that on June 7th, the defendant focused on Will as a result of initially. And you will hear from us. How does that focus develop, ladies and gentlemen? Well, you're going to learn from Solomon Gaston, cooperating state's witness, exactly when that occurred, roughly around noon. Avion contacts Solomon. The evidence will show Solomon drives over Portage, and they're going to hang out. And you'll learn what that means. So they get in the Kia Sportage, and they drive around. And while they're driving around, they find Will. And you will learn what the defendant's instructions are to Solomon with regard to Will. Follow him. And as they follow him, you will learn what further instruction he's given. Pull up on him, pull alongside him. And you will learn what happens. You're going to learn that Solomon go back home, home being 508 Railroad Street, the home of Avion Gaines, his mother Berta Gaines, his brother Aviante Atterbury, and younger siblings. And when they get home, you'll learn what happens. You're going to learn, ladies and gentlemen, that hours before what happened, as just described, the focus intensified. And it intensified among the defendant and those he was complicit with, his family, Solomon. Such that roughly around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, with his brother and Solomon, they go out and they begin pursuing, looking for, and following Will again. What will the evidence tell you about that? You will hear from a young lady that was with Will, Irace of Wales. It's a friend of Will. He picks her up at Pearl Street by his sister's house, and from there, Solomon in his Kia Sportage and Avion with his brother in the white Chrysler begin the pursuit. It goes over to Jackson Street for a reason. So they're following him through town to Jackson Street. Will makes a decision to go to Jackson Street because he needs to get to his friend, Frank. Why? Why does he have a change in plans with Irace and not just go and eat like they had originally wanted to do? And because you will hear Irace describe how they're following him. Somewhat aggressively, almost causing accidents. And he goes to get Brent. Now, you won't just have to rely on Irace. The evidence will show you from video footage from the city about that contact. And you will learn that at some point, Will turns into Rainforest Village, an apartment complex in the city, and so does the defendant's brother with the defendant and Solomon. And you will learn about that exchange, ladies and gentlemen. The evidence will show you how that exchange went, but it will also reveal the defendant's focus. The defendant's focus on Will and why he had that focus. As I mentioned before, this involved girls. Defendant Gaines' ex-girlfriend, Ayla Oberstar, and defendant's, at the time, current girl, Emma Escalante. And you will hear what is discussed. And you will hear what statements are hurled at Will. She's both ours. And you will hear from Irace how that encounter ends. Suffice it to say, the evidence will show Will and Irace leave. They go and attempt to salvage their time together that day. Avion Gaines, the defendant, is not Will Sheffey's focus on June 7th, 2025. So they leave the city, they go get something to drink, they get a car wash. Now the evidence will also show you where the defendant and his family go. They go back to Railroad. You'll see what they are doing in footage. You will see that they are outside by their cars, the white Chrysler, the black Altima, their mother's white Telluride, and they're talking. They're on their phone, they're talking, what they're doing. They're together. And what you will learn from the evidence is Avion Gaines' focus did not shift. In fact, earlier in the day, you will learn there was communication with his cousin, Xavier Jackson. And you will learn about that communication, and you will learn that at some point in the afternoon, Xavier Jackson, with his girlfriend, Jenna Ball, are going to come out. They're going to come from Ashtabula, and they're going to come to Paynesville. And they do. And they go to his dad of Lakeisha Jackson. And you will learn what happens when they're at Lakeisha's and why there's a decision made to leave Lakeisha's. Boys are upset. Evidence will show boys are arguing. We gotta go. We gotta go to Granny's house. Granny's house is at 594, the north end of town. And you will hear what Lakeisha retrieves before they leave, what she does with it, and off they go. Now, while this is happening, the evidence will show you, ladies and gentlemen, that the defendant has not abandoned the pursuit and following of Will Sheffey. Avion Gaines in his brother's car, a white Chrysler, and Solomon Gaston get out on North State around the 6 o'clock hour and punch and kick Will's car and pound on it while in traffic. The evidence will show you who Will is with. He has taken Ira East home, and he's now with Ayla Oaks. The assault on Will's car occurs while there's some traffic stopped at a light. When the light cycles, they get back in the car and they go back to Railroad. They reconvene and they go to Granny's. Who's at Granny's? You will hear Jenna Ball, Xavier, her child, defendant, his brother Aviante, Solomon, his aunt, Lakeisha, his grandparents, his mother. Other friends are invited. You will hear Tyree Austin and his girlfriend and their child. The evidence, ladies and gentlemen, will provide you with what they're doing, who they're communicating with, how they're communicating. And what you will learn is that at 6:40 via Instagram, the defendant says to Will, "Drive by this bitch, I dare you. If not, stop texting." Now Will has to drive by that residence or that area. He's with Ayla Overstar. And what the evidence will show is she lives behind Will's grandparents on Homeward. So yes, he does drive by. For the last time on June 7th of 2025. Because fast forwarding ahead to shortly before 8 o'clock, Will Sheffey's vehicle is in the area of Shelby, Homeworth, and Pleasant Avenue. And the defendant and his brother are alerted by his aunt, Lakeisha Jackson. And the evidence will explain to you how that occurs. And the evidence will show you what they do in response to her instructions. They pursue him and they follow him. And she includes herself in it. And that's where those two paths of travel, ladies and gentlemen, come into play. You will learn how the defendant pursues him with his family. You will learn how they arrive at Rockwood in North State. It was a strategic blocking in. You will learn how they account the murder and kidnapping of Will. And you will learn the conduct of the defendant that makes him in guilt. Now, I've spent several minutes talking to you about what happened at the corner of Rockwood and North State. It was less than 2 weeks. And after the defendants left, the police are called. And the police are called because there's numerous 911 calls regarding drive-by shooting, multiple shots fired. And where the evidence will take you at this point is into the investigation, that of the initial responders, and then that of the detective bureau that was called in that night. As you will see, ladies and gentlemen, you will hear from Lieutenant Slocum, who was the officer in charge that night. And he's at the station when he receives that dispatch. And he immediately starts processing that, what he needs to do to prepare to get to that crime scene. While he's doing that, Officer Grove is at the scene. And he comes upon the Hyundai Genesis, where Will Sheffey lays dead. And you will see his response to that on dash cam. But what you will learn from Lieutenant Slocum is he's at the station, he asks other officers to review camera footage from the city camera system, which you'll hear testimony about. He gets in his vehicle, he communicates with dispatch and requests mutual aid from other agencies, the Sheriff's Department. He's assessing what else needs to be done. His first